Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, we're back for the final preview episode of the 2025 season. It's the Alamo Bowl, USC versus TCU in San Antonio. Excited to preview this one, Cody.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity for this team to get one last chance to go out there and compete together. Also to create some momentum going into the offseason, getting ready for the 2026 season. And look, there's a lot of guys that won't be playing in this game, which is the case around the country with the transfer portal and guys getting ready for the NFL. But I'm very excited to see some of these young guys get an opportunity. Also, some of these veterans on this team that were lower on the depth chart, now they're going to get a chance to go out there and play and show what they can do. Hopefully go get a win for the Trojans, but I'm really excited for this one on Tuesday. Should be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, per usual, Cody, you are right on track with the coaching staff of both teams. Actually, Coach Sonny Dykes talked about how this is kind of a springboard into the 2026 season, but still you're capping off the 2025 season. Coach Riley has said that as well. He said the bowl practices are invaluable. So a lot of guys getting reps that maybe didn't in the regular season. So excited to see who we're going to see. And that's kind of my next point, Cody. A preview episode for a bowl game is a tough task. And I don't envy you when you had to do your prep for this because you're trying to figure out, okay, well, who's going to play for TCU, who's going to play for USC. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a little bit of a different preview episode, just a PSA for everyone, just because we're trying to keep track of everyone, not even just players, but coaching staff as well. Who are we going to see come Tuesday? So just a PSA in that sense before we dive into it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, Keely, because I know there's a lot of narratives right now that, everyone's only focused on the college football playoff. That's not true at all. These games, these practices, the bowl prep, it's really like an extra spring ball or almost an extra fall camp. These are so important for the momentum of your football team. Now, I know obviously everyone's ultimate goal is to be in the college football playoff, but you can't overlook these bowl games. You can't overlook these practices and just this time and camaraderie that you get to spend with your team, especially for the guys that are going to be here next year. So don't think for 1 second that this game isn't important. I know both teams are going to come into this one ready to go.
And just one final note from me, Cody, before we dive into it. Just wanted to say, long time no see, not only to you, Cody, but to our listeners. I know we've been gone for a little bit. We took a break. There's also just been so much news happening that we've gone to our normal cadence of let's have all the news happen, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it at length. Of course, we're still going to have off-season podcast episodes, so don't worry about that. We'll be back. We just wanted to have a little bite-sized preview episode. I know everyone is busy with the holidays, Cody and I included, so just you can get ready for this game as a Trojan fan, and then we'll come back in the offseason with a regular cadence. So just wanted to put that out there as well, Cody, because I know we've been gone for a little bit.
Yeah, we miss you guys. It's good to be back recording another episode. Hopefully, everyone had a happy holidays, got to spend time with family, had safe travels, but now we're locked back in and ready for some USC football.
Coach Cody always bringing us into the right mindset. It's a preview episode. We're talking USC football. We're back in the zone. That being said, Cody, let's start it off. Who's at the helm for TCU? What should we know about this team in 2025?
Yeah, the head coach for the TCU Horned Frogs is Sonny Dykes. This is Dykes' fourth season as head coach for TCU, and he's already had a ton of success in a short amount of time. In his first season as head coach, he led the Horned Frogs to a 12-0 regular season record. And remember, this was a year that they kind of came out of nowhere and surprised everyone. They made it all the way to the college football playoff. They ended up beating Michigan in the semifinals, and then unfortunately came up short against Georgia in the national championship. But that season, Dykes won pretty much every coach of the year award that you can win. Now, since then, TCU has been up and down the last couple of years, but this year they finished with an 8-4 regular season record, and they're looking to finish strong against the Trojans in the bowl game.
And obviously a familiar face for Coach Riley. I don't know if anyone caught the initial press conference when they first announced the bowl picks, but Coach Dykes and Coach Riley were very chummy together because it was like old friends reuniting. I believe Coach Dykes said that he's known Lincoln since he was 18. So obviously they have not only personal experience together, but coaching experience as well, Cody, right?
Yeah, Dykes was at Texas Tech when Coach Riley was a graduate assistant. I laugh too because I imagine just a young graduate assistant, Lincoln Riley, already cooking up all these plays in his mind, knowing that he's going to be an offensive coordinator one day and then eventually a head coach. But he got to coach under the late, great Mike Leach. Both of them did. You can see the similarities in their offenses with what Mike Leach did when he was a head coach. So, yeah, there's some overlap there with them at Texas Tech. So it's going to be two old friends, but I promise you when game day comes around, they're both going to want to get the better of each other in this one.
Well, we talked about question marks, Cody, when it comes to bowl games, and that's no different for coordinators as well. When it comes to this TCU offense, the biggest question is who's going to lead their offense. Normally, I ask you who's the coordinator, but I know there's been some shifts this offseason so far.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Bowl games are so tough to prepare for because of all the turnaround with the players, but also the turnaround with the coaching staff as well. So TCU's offensive coordinator during the season was Kendall Briles, but recently he was hired as the OC at South Carolina, so he is gone. Now the Horned Frogs did hire a new OC. His name is Gordon Samus. He was the offensive coordinator at UConn this past season, but right now Samus is actually the interim head coach for their bowl game that they're playing today. We're recording this on a Saturday, so he won't be joining the team until after that. Now, with that being said, TCU does have a co-offensive coordinator. His name is AJ Ricker. He was the offensive line coach this season. Sonny Dykes is also a former offensive coordinator. So I would anticipate either one of them calling plays. But I was looking through articles trying to figure out who's going to be calling plays. I couldn't find anything definitive. But either way, whoever is calling this offense, I expect the scheme and the DNA to stay the same. It's going to be what they've done all season long. This is an offense that's capable of putting up a lot of yards. They can be dangerous if they get hot. They're averaging 425 yards per game so far this season, which is 27th in the country. And they're also averaging over 30 points per game as well.
So obviously USC's defense is going to be preparing for the identity of TCU's offense. In that sense, what is their identity?
Yeah, they're right around 50-50 pass to run, but they have had a lot more success this year throwing the football than they have had running it. They're 93rd in rushing offense, but they're 8th in the country in passing offense. This is a top 10 passing attack. They're averaging just under 300 yards per game. To add some more context to that, USC is 7th in passing offense. So both teams can get it done through the air. Now, there is an asterisk next to that, though, when it comes to this passing attack, because TCU's starting quarterback, Josh Hoover, has entered the transfer portal and he will not be playing in this game. Hoover was a significant part of their offense. He threw for 3,400 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions this year. With Hoover out, Ken Seals will now get the start on Tuesday. Now, Seals has only thrown for 25 yards this season, but he's experienced overall in his career as a quarterback. He played at Vanderbilt before coming to TCU. He also has over 4,000 career passing yards and 29 touchdowns through the air as well.
Now, I don't expect you to be an expert on Seals, Cody, but how much does he compare to TCU's starting quarterback in the sense of if you're USC's defense preparing for this new challenge?
Yeah, they're very similar with their play style. Now, like I mentioned, he played 3 years early on at Vanderbilt. So when you go back and watch that tape, he is more of a pocket passer, which Hoover, who has been the starting quarterback for TCU, is as well. Neither one of these guys are dual threat type quarterbacks. They're not going to take off and run around all game. They want to sit in the pocket and throw the football around, push the ball down the field. So even though they're changing offensive coordinators and they're changing their quarterback, I still expect the scheme and the play calling to be pretty similar. And when you're talking about this scheme, this is an air raid spread offense. They're going to spend the entire game in shotgun. They're going to throw it all over the field. They want to play the majority of the game two and 11 personnel, which means one tight end, one running back, three wide receivers. They'll also get to some four wide receiver looks with only one running back in the game, too. We mentioned that Sonny Dykes, Lincoln Riley have some overlap under Mike Leach. So you can see some similarities between USC's offense and TCU's offense. Now, they both tweaked it a little bit, but when you watch the tape, I can see it and go, oh, yeah, hey, we've done that. We did this. I see how they both kind of made it their own, but some of the route schemes and some of the things on the outside with the concepts are the same. Now, like I mentioned, they like to spend the majority of the game in 11 personnel, get some four wide groupings, but similar to USC, they will also use some 12 personnel groupings as well, which means one running back, two tight ends, and two wide receivers. Think like we did with Walker Lyons and Lake McCree in some of these games. When they bring those guys in, they want to run the football in those formations, especially letting their tight ends work in space, pull around, work up to the second level, block some linebackers, and try to create some gaps down the field. Now, they will throw it a little bit as well in this personnel grouping. Be ready for some play action, be ready for some RPOs and 12 personnel. But if I'm the defense, I'm anticipating run first when they come out with two tight ends, and then I will react to the pass. Now, talking about the pass game, with Seals, I'm curious to see, since there's not a ton of film this year at TCU, if it stays the same. But when Hoover was in there, they love, and I mean absolutely love, to attack downfield all game long. They're going to take shot after shot on the outside versus man to man. They're going to take shots over the middle of the field versus zone. this is going to be a huge challenge for USC secondary, more specifically their corners on the outside. When they're playing man to man, they want to dial up go routes, deep posts, deep over routes. They're going to push the ball down the field consistently. We cannot give up explosive plays. Now, when it comes to the run game, I would say almost every run has a RPO tag to it, meaning that they're either going to hand it off, they can read the defensive end and pull it. I wouldn't anticipate a lot of zone read. Both Seals and Hoover aren't run first quarterbacks, like I mentioned. But what they want to do is they want to read that extra defender. If it's a linebacker and he creeps in the box, they're going to pull it and kick out a hitch or a slant. Or if he widens too far outside, then they're going to give it. And now you're weak in the box and they have an advantage when it comes to the run scheme. So be ready for some of that with the RPO. Again, I wouldn't anticipate Seals pulling it and taking off every other play and reading the defensive end and going for 20-yard runs. But you still have to be ready for it because he will do it to keep you honest. Now, with that being said, I mentioned how they like to get into some of these four wide personnel groupings. The reason they do that is they want to spread you out on the defensive side of the ball. They want your linebackers to have to cover a slot receiver or even a tight end in space. They want your DBs on the outside to be on an island to see if you can cover and also tackle in space. They want to create a light box too in the run game. They haven't had a ton of success running the football, but when they have, they've gotten a 5, maybe even a 6-man box, and now they can win their one-on-ones or get some double teams up to the second level. So be ready for these these 4 wides with these super wide spacings. And when I say spread you out, I mean no one's attached either a tight end or anybody to the end of the line of scrimmage. Now they're 4 or 5 yards removed from the end of the line of scrimmage. And then there's receivers on the outside as well. And sometimes they'll even put their running back at a receiver position out of the backfield. So guys have to be great one-on-one in space this week. And then the last thing I'll say for this offense, just be ready for some of these unique formations. They'll get into some empty looks. When I get to these 4 wide looks too, or even 3 wides, they have some formations, Keely, to where all 5 skill players, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back, they're all on the same side of the football, meaning that they're all split to the right, they're all split to the left. For a defense, that is so difficult to make adjustments to figure out what you're doing. You shift everybody to one side and then they'll hand it off going back the opposite way, or have people run a drag route and get across the field and then attack away from where you set the strength of formation. So they're very good at being creative on the offensive side of the ball. But luckily for our defense, we have one of the best play callers in the country that's known for his creativity. So they've seen some of these formations as well. The Trojans just have to be ready to game plan this week for some of these unique looks, and then be ready for some in-game adjustments to counter what they're going to do.
Well, given how we talk about the quote unquote funkiness of Coach Lynn's defense, is there a way that you talk about the unique formations that TCU can do? Can you out funky them in a way where you kind of confuse a backup quarterback of sorts, where he has to do too much thinking at the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on third downs, on obvious passing situations where Danton Lynn's defense is at its best, where they can pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. But with that being said, they do have some of those quick pitches. They do have some quick motions out of the backfield where they'll get their running back in space if you do try to bring pressure, and they can create some advantageous situations there. And then they also are very good in the tunnel screen game, the quick throws to get the ball out early. So they can counter back and forth with what USC does on defense and then react to that on offense. It's going to come down to which team is going to set the tone. Are we going to dictate what they do on offense, or offensively with their formations? Is that going to dictate what we do on defense? I think that's going to come down to who's having success early on. The other team's going to be forced to have to make those in-game adjustments like I talked about.
You mentioned the familiarity, obviously, between Coach Dykes and Coach Riley. How much does that actually play into a game like this? Or is it just more something that, the tendencies, the familiarity, but everyone's evolved over the course of their career?
Yeah, I do think that carries a little bit of weight, but since it's a bowl game, Keely, and it's new coaches and it's new players, I think I'm throwing everything out the window. I mean, I'm
Fair.
using the base game plan. I'm using what they've done all season. You got to watch the tape to get an idea of who they are, but you've got to be ready for any and everything in these bowl games. There's probably going to be a ton of trick plays. There's going to be formations and looks that neither team has seen all year on film. They're going to do some things that Coach Riley just drew up, at 2 a.m. on Tuesday night, the week before the game, coming up with some stuff. And then defensively, they're going to draw up some schemes as well to attack this offense, and vice versa when USC's on the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, I mean, so that does carry a little bit of weight, and they are familiar with each other, but they also know that as well. So they're going to try to play that in their favor, to where they may show you the same look or the same thing that they've done, and then break some tendencies and run some different plays off of those formations. So it's going to be fun. I love when there's some overlap with the coaches, because it means a little bit more, and it also means they're going to spend a little extra time with their prep this week as well.
Well, Cody, you already talked about a key change at the quarterback position. I know you have your eye on one more player on TCU's offense. Who are you looking for on Tuesday?
Yeah, I've got both eyes on this guy actually this week. This kid is extremely talented. He's my red dot player of the week. And for those of you that may be new to the podcast, when I mention red dot player of the week, that is talking about a player that can disrupt the game plan. And the reason we call him a red dot player is because when you get in the film room with your coach, you have that little red laser pointer that controls the film. And when they continue to shine that red dot over and over on the same player, you know he's disrupting the game plan. And that's exactly what this wide receiver does. His name is Eric McAllister. He is a big time playmaker on the outside for the Horned Frogs. 64 receptions, 1,100 yards this year, and 10 touchdowns. He averages 17 yards per catch. Remember how I talked about they like to push the ball down the field, or they're going to be looking for McAllister on the outside. So USC needs to have an answer for him in the secondary and not let him get going in this football game.
Alrighty, Cody, I want to take a look at TCU's defense. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from an SUV is a range of sizes fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs, progress you can feel. And at Ralph's, you get high quality and low prices, so you never have to compromise your budget. Save on thousands of items throughout the store. Ralph's, fresh for everyone. Now, as promised, Cody, looking at TCU's defense, who is at the helm?
Yeah, there's no confusion when it comes to the coordinator on the defensive side of the ball. This TCU defense is led by Andy Avalos. This is his second season as the DC for the Horned Frogs. Before coming to TCU, Avalos was a defensive coordinator for Oregon from 2019 to 2020. And then he was actually the head coach at Boise State from 2021 to 2023 before joining TCU back in 2024. This year, TCU is 71st in total defense, and they're 72nd in scoring defense, giving up 25 points per game.
Well, if I know you, Cody, I know you've done some film study, obviously. So, what did you see on the film about this defense?
Yeah, this is a 4-2-5 defense. And what I mean by that is they're going to have four defensive linemen, two linebackers, and five defensive backs in the game. That fifth DB is going to be that nickel linebacker. 4-2-5 defense is also known as a nickel defense. I anticipate them to play this the majority of the game, especially going against this offense for USC. They love to throw the football around. They like to get in those three wide looks. Even if we go 12 personnel a good amount in this game, I still expect TCU to play in their 4-2-5 look. Now, with that being said, this is a defense that is a lot better at stopping the run than they are defending against the pass. They're 46th in the country in rushing defense, which is better than average, but they're 109th in passing defense this season. They're giving up over 240 yards per game through the air. This is going to be a great opportunity for USC to attack this secondary. Even without Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane in this game, some of these young guys are going to have to step up, and Jade Mayava is going to have to do a great job of staying strong in the pocket and taking shots down the field because there are going to be big plays to be made. Now, when you talk about attacking the secondary, they're going to do a good job of mixing up some zone and some man coverage. They will mix up both one and two high looks when they're playing zone. They do a good job of disguising pre snap and then showing you something different post snap. And then they'll also play some man to man as well. Now, when you watch the tape, they played a lot more zone on film, but I wouldn't be surprised in this game with both Lane and Lemon out that they might play a little bit more man to man. And maybe they want to see what they have in some of these young guys or some of these DBs going forward. Can they play man to man? Can we fix some of the issues that we've had in the secondary? So they will play a good amount of zone, but I anticipate maybe a little bit more man to man this game, which is going to be some great opportunities on the outside for some one on one matchups for USC's wide receivers.
On that note, Cody, I just want to run through so everyone knows the latest from Coach Riley, at least what we've heard from him as far as who's going to play, or at least an availability report of sorts. Not playing is Kamari Ramsey, Makai Lemon, Jacoby Lane, Lake McCree, and Eric Gentry. Quote unquote, dealing with injuries, but would like to play Anthony Lucas and Bishop Fitzgerald. And then out due to offseason surgery is Elijah Page, Killian O'Connor, and Jakeem Stewart, which shout out to Jakeem Stewart. I don't know if you saw the news, Cody, but Coach Riley said over the course of the season, Jakeem actually played with a fracture in his foot, a stress fracture. So the production we saw from the true freshman, what could we have seen? What could we have seen if he was completely healthy? I'm excited for his sophomore year for sure in that sense.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Shout out to Jakeem Stewart. I mean, he's a true freshman. He reclassified. He's supposed to be a senior in high school, and instead he's making big time plays in the Coliseum with a foot fracture. Now I get why they call him Thanos. That nickname definitely holds up. And then to the other guys that are leaving, that are whether they're going to the transfer portal, whether they're going to the NFL and taking that next step, wish them nothing but the best. I'm going to miss watching them wearing Cardinal and gold and getting to represent USC football. They're Trojans for life. Fight on. I wish all of you guys nothing but the best going forward.
What's interesting, Cody, is we've talked about the last 2 years an offensive lineman who's kind of had a springboard situation in the bowl game where they get the majority of reps that they're not used to in that season, and then they transition into a starting position the next season. What's
Yeah.
interesting is I feel like for USC's offense this year, it might not be an offensive lineman per se. It might be a skill player, maybe a tight end or a wide receiver. Obviously, Tanu Hines has gotten a lot of run as a true freshman so far, but obviously it looks like he'll be wide receiver one this game. So who's going to step up? Who are those names that we're going to see now and be like, oh, right, they contributed in an Alamo Bowl last year, and we're talking about them all the time next year. So I'm curious to see who actually makes a name for themselves on Tuesday in that regard.
Yeah, that is a terrific point too, Keely, because I flash back to the game against Louisville a couple years ago in the Holiday Bowl. Remember when Jacoby Lane and Makai Lemon, who were really under the radar, had breakout performances? And I
It's a good
remember Makai
point.
Lane catching a seam down the middle, taking a hit. Jacoby Lane had 2 touchdown receptions in that game, and everyone started scratching their head like, okay, maybe there is something there with these guys. And then you fast forward a couple years later, and now they're both big time players. You have a Blitnikoff Award winner and Makai Lemon. You have Jacoby Lane, who's one of the best wide receivers in the country. So maybe it's someone else's turn to step up in this bowl game that's going to springboard them forward going into the offseason. And when you have that confidence from a bowl game, from the last game of the year, and you start to build a little bit of that belief in yourself, that carries so much weight going into spring ball, going into fall camp, and then you become a better player because of it. So I'm glad you brought that up, Keely, because we've seen it in real time with some of the guys on the roster right now. But with that being said, for this offense, going up against this defense, it's still going to be a tough challenge to have some breakout performances. But I really am excited to see who's going to step up in this game and give themselves some confidence going into the offseason.
In that sense, Cody, any final thoughts about this TCU defense that we should know heading into Tuesday?
Yeah, just a couple more notes from me about this defense before we move on. This is not a huge pressure team on early down and distances. What I mean by early down and distances, first and second down, their base defense. Now, obviously, they do have some pressure looks and they'll bring a linebacker blitz. They'll bring some secondary blitzes that they've shown on film, but they really like to just line up and play defense and let their 4-man pass rush get home and play coverage behind it. Now, if Jaden Mayava is sitting back there and picking the secondary apart and he's comfortable and they can't get home with that 4-man pass rush, I wouldn't be surprised if they amplify the pressure a little bit. If they do that, it's going to be a big game for in-game adjustments. So you go to the sideline, get on the tablet with Coach Hanson, Coach Riley, and then figure out what their pressure look is for the day. But I'm very curious to see what their game plan is going to be on defense going up against this USC offense. And then the final thing I'll say is everything I just mentioned on first and second down, throw it out the window because we're talking about third down. So the pressure does ramp up a little bit. Their looks change. That 4-2-5 will now turn into some 3-down looks. They'll get some stacked look with their linebackers. They'll walk guys up in the A gap and the B gap. They'll try to get you confused pre snap, send the pressure one way, and then bring it a different way. Now, it's not quite as funky or as exotic as Danton Lynn likes to do on the defensive side of the ball, but they do have some very unique and some very good pressure packages as well. When I was watching their third down defense, they do a good job of disguising their coverage and disguising their pressure look. So if I'm Jaden Mayav and I'm the offensive line this week, my antenna goes up on third down, and I've got to be great with my pre-snap communication.
And then I know you have a key player on defense that Trojan fans should know about. Cody, take it away.
Yeah, my red dot player on defense is Caleb Alarms Orr. This kid is a really good football player, very talented, 6'2, 235-pound linebacker. He leads the team with both 119 tackles and 4 sacks. USC needs to have a game plan for number 3 all game long, and Jade Mayava better figure out where he is on the field for every single play.
Now, from your perspective, Cody, on the whole, when you look at a bowl game outside of wins and losses, what does success look like for you as far as not only putting a bow on the 2025 season, but like we said, a springboard into 2026?
Yeah, I would say the most important thing is those practices that you get leading up to the bowl game, just because those are like a glorified spring ball, a glorified fall camp. And now you have some of these starters or these guys that aren't going to be here next year sitting out of this game. So the young guys that were backups or role players now get an opportunity to go compete and put their best foot forward going into the offseason. Because I promise you, these coaches are evaluating every single one of these practices. They're watching how you prepare for the drills. They're watching how you prepare in 7-on-7, how you compete in team drills, 9-on-7, one-on-ones, whatever it may be. They are analyzing everything because they need to know what they have going forward. Maybe some things they need to address in the transfer portal, maybe some things they need to address in recruiting. So if you're a guy on this roster, you have to take these practices very seriously, especially if you're going to be here next year, so it can give you that confidence going into the offseason. And then the other thing, just compete your tail off. Like you mentioned, outside of wins and losses, yeah, we'd love to win this game, but I just want to see a team that takes pride in wearing the Cardinal and gold and it's going to go out there and compete as hard as they can and put everything they have on the field.
Alrighty, Cody, the final preview episode of the 2025 season is already in the books. It's crazy. We say it all the
I
time.
know.
These seasons go by so fast. And so, Cody, thank you, per usual, for all the hard work you do, all the film you watch. I can speak for the listeners when I say that you make us smarter, and we appreciate all that you do. But I also need to thank the listeners as well. Cody says it every episode, but I have to reiterate, we couldn't do any of this without your support, without you listening. And I'm sorry our schedules are chaotic sometimes, but we love putting out a product for you guys, and we'll be back in the spring to do that. But that being said, Cody, take it away. I'm feeling sentimental apparently at the end of the year.
You got me.
My thank yous.
You got me all emotional over here. I'm sad.
I'm sure I did.
What's the saying, Keely? They say, don't be sad that it's over. Be happy that it happened. Right?
Yeah,
I feel like that's always
the
yeah. Just be thankful for that. So even though obviously the season didn't end exactly the way that USC wanted to, although this team is heading in the right direction, I promise you that, it's still been a lot of great things to watch this year. It's been really cool to follow this program. I'm really excited the way that Lincoln Riley has led this team in the direction of this football program, everyone behind the scenes as well. And I know you like to thank me, but also credit to Keely. She's the pilot. I'm just the co-pilot. I'm the guy that says, go watch film. You talk football. Keely keeps me in order. She puts everything in line. Also, shout out Emily, our producer. She's been amazing. She edits all these videos. Keely and her are a great team. They do a great job with this podcast. But again, thank you so much to you guys as well for supporting us. This show doesn't happen without you guys. And we're just so excited to be able to bring this content to you guys and continue to build that relationship with our listeners. So with that being said, let's finish the season off the right way. Fight on. This isn't the last time you'll see us either. We're going to do some off-season episodes. We'll get ready to talk about spring ball, recap 2025, talk about what to look forward to in 2026. Got some great recruits in this signing class and this last recruiting cycle. So I'm really excited to talk about those guys. But either way, happy holidays. Love you guys. Fight on. Let's go get a win on Tuesday.
Alrighty, you heard the man. That's going to wrap it up for our final preview episode of 2025. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.